Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So welcome to a new session on vocabulary building, guided reading. This is the Al-Qira'atul Rashida book by Sheikh Abu Hassan al-Nadwi, and we're on our second passage here. And you don't need to take any notes. What you want to do is just watch the video and rewatch it a couple times maybe. And all of the vocabulary that's occurring within this passage and the passage after it, I will have isolated that for you. It's over 150 unique vocabulary items. Many of them will be verbs, some of them will be nouns, and we'll see some adjectives, and we'll see some adverbs and some expressions. So all of that will be neatly organized for you in a PDF, so that relieves you from the need of having to write anything yourself. You don't have to write anything. So just listen carefully. Let's begin. The chapter heading here is لما بلغت السابعة من عمري. لما بلغت السابعة من عمري. When I reached 7 years old. When I reached the age of 7. لما بلغت السابعة من عمري. What happened is that when I reached the age of 7, my father told me that now you need to pray. أمرني أبي بالصلاة. So now he starts the passage. لما بلغت السابعة من عمري أمرني أبي بالصلاة. My father instructed me to pray. So بلغت is بلغ يبلغ, and it means to reach. بلغ يبلغ. السابعة means the 7th. So in other words, السنة السابعة من عمري. And the word السنة is not needed, because when you say من عمري, then it has to be years. You're talking about years. So when I reach the 7th year of my life, like literally speaking, when I reach the 7th year of my life. This is how we say when I turned 7. But you don't say I turned. So in the Arabic expression, whatever verb it is for turning, that's how we say it in English, but in Arabic we say reaching. So when I reach 7 years old. لما بلغت السابعة من عمري أمرني أبي بالصلاة. My father commanded me to pray. أمر يأمر. The verb is أمر يأمر, and the masdar is الأمر, to command. وكنت تعلمت كثيرا من الأدعية. And prior to this, وكنت تعلمت كثيرا من الأدعية, I had already learned many supplications. وكنت تعلمت, I had already learned كثيرا من الأدعية, many supplications. So over here, the verb is تعلمت, and this is تعلم يتعلم. تعلم يتعلم, and the master is تعلم. The verbal noun, the infinitive is تعلم, to learn. تعلم. تعليم means to teach, and تعلم means to learn. So تعلمت, I learned. When you put a kana before a madi verb, then the meaning changes from basic past to past perfect. Past perfect. In other words, distant past. So this had already happened, and it's done. And it's not ongoing. It's done and it's complete. And I had already done this. Okay, so he's 7 years old, and he's saying that before I reached the age of 7, I had already. So this is reflected in English by the helping verb had. So you say helped, nasara, kana nasara, had helped. Had helped. If you want to say the helping happened recently, then you put qad. Qad nasara, he has helped. So qad nasara, he has helped. Kana nasara, he had helped. And nasara on its own just means helped. Okay, so that's وَكُنْتُ تَعَلَّمْتُ. وَكُنْتُ تَعَلَّمْتُ, and I had already learned many supplications. كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْأَدْعِيَةِ. So this word here, الْأَدْعِيَةِ, is the plural of the singular ism الدُّعَاءُ, or du'a. Du'a is a supplication, a prayer, and أدعية is the plural, أدعية. وَحَفِظْتُ سُورًا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ الْكَرِيمِ, and I had memorized some surahs from the Noble Quran. Some surahs from the Noble Quran. من أمي, from my mother. وكانت أمي تتكلم, and my mother used to. Okay, so now we have a kana combining with a mudari verb. تتكلم is mudari. The madi would be تكلم. تكلم, تكلمت. تكلم, he spoke. تكلمت, she spoke. تتكلم, she speaks. كانت أمي تتكلم, my mother used to speak with me. وكانت أمي تتكلم معي. معي means with me. So my mother used to speak with me. Okay, so what happens is kana, when it combines with the madi verb, it gives you past perfect. In other words, distant past, already done, occurred, finished. When kana combines with a mudari verb, because تتكلم is a mudari verb, then it gives you past continuous. In other words, happened again and again in the past. So kana takes the verb back into the past, and the mudari gives you the continuity. So past continuous. وكانت أمي تتكلم, and my mother would speak to me every night, or used to speak with me every night. كل ليلة عند المنام, at bedtime. عند المنام. فتقص, so she would relate to me stories of the prophets. فتقص علي قصص الأنبياء. So this word قصص is the plural of قصة. قصة is a singular, قصص is the plural. Al-Anbiya means prophets, and the singular would be nabiyun, nabiyun, one prophet. Anbiya, قصص الأنبياء. Okay, so what else can I tell you here about the grammar? لما بلغت السابعة من عمري أمرني. So this is conditional. لما means when. So you would expect it to be followed by two sentences separated by a comma. So بلغت السابعة من عمري would be the first sentence. We call that جملة الشرط. And أمرني أبي بالصلاة would be the jawab, the second half of the conditional statement. So when I reached 7 years old, comma, my father commanded and instructed me to pray. And the me is coming from ni. أمرني أبي بالصلاة. وكنت تعلمت كثيرا من الأدعية, and I had learned many. So we're going to add the extra word already. And I had already learned many supplications, and I had memorized some. So the had, HAD, is coming from the addition of kuntu. Because if he said وَتَعَلَّمْتُ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْأَدْعِيَةِ وَحَفِظْتُ, and he left out the kuntu, then it would mean I learned many. No, and the had already is coming from the addition of the kuntu. Okay, so a couple of let me speak about this a little more. So the basic verbs in the Arabic language are two: the madi and the mudari. The madi is fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, and the mudari is yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna. He, they. And then there's like a whole series of them, depending on the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one you're talking to, or talking about, or the one you're talking to. So he, they, she, they, and then you. Okay, so this is all taught separately. Okay, we don't teach this right now. We teach this separately, and there's a video on this channel about verb conjugation. It's about 40 minutes long, and people should watch it. Okay, it will give you like the basic overview on how verbs are conjugated, both the past one as well as the present future one, and it does it systematically. You watch the video once, you'll know this very well. Okay, so now variations of the tenses are achieved by adding kana at the front. Kana at the front. So when you add kana at the front, and when I say you add kana, you have to add the corresponding version of kana. So just like fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, we'd have kana, kana, kanu. So kana ta'allama, kana ta'allama, kanu ta'allamu. So he had learned, they had learned, kanat ta'allamat. And then kuntu ta'allamtu. So we're in the first person, I. Kuntu ta'allamtu, and if you wanted to say we had learned many supplications, it would be wa kunna ta'allamna kathiran min al-adiyah, because the pronoun for singular first person is tu, and the pronoun for plural first person is na. You see, so the kana needs to fluctuate similar to how, because kana is a verb in its own right, so it has to have a pronoun as well. It has to have a ism of kana. We call it the ism of kana. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. وَحَفِظْتُ, and the waw here carries the influence of kuntu, so it's the equivalent of saying kuntu twice. So وَكُنْتُ تَعَلَّمْتُ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْأَدْعِيَةِ, but he doesn't have to say وَكُنْتُ حَفِظْتُ. He just has to say وَحَفِظْتُ. You see, and the waw would carry the meaning of kuntu. So that's why in the English translation I did it like this. I said, and I had already learned many supplications, and I had memorized some surahs from the noble Quran from my mother, min ummi. وَكَانَتْ أُمِّي تَتَكَلَّمُ. Okay, now when the kana combines with the mudari verb, it gives you past continuous. So it would be كَانَ يَتَكَلَّمُ, كَانَا يَتَكَلَّمَانِ, كَانُوا يَتَكَلَّمُونَ. So you would need to know how the kana verb is conjugated. كَانَ, كَانَا, كَانُوا, كَانَتْ, كَانَتَا, كنت, كنا, كنت, كنتما, كنتم, كنتي, كنتما, كنتن, كنت, كنا. And then the mudari is يتكلم, يتكلمان, يتكلمون. And again, this is all taught in that video on the channel, the verb conjugation, verb mastery video. Okay, so what he's doing here is he's taking the singular feminine conjugation of kanat and combining it with the singular feminine conjugation of takallama, the mudari, yatakallamu. So it has two tas there. Tatakallamu has two tas. So the first ta is the ta you would expect to be at the beginning of a feminine mudari verb. Yafalu, yafalani, yafaluna, tafalu. He, they, she. So she will be tafalu. So tatakallamu, and then there's another ta there, the second ta. That second ta is part of the pattern. So the base letters in tatakallamu are actually kaf, lam, and mim. Kalam means speech. Yatakallama and yatakallamu. Okay, وكانت أمي تتكلم, and my mother used to speak with me every night at the time of sleep or at bedtime. فتقص, so she would relate, and قص يقص means to tell a story. فتقص علي قصص الأنبياء, so she would relate to me the stories of the prophets. وكنت أسمع هذه القصص, and I would listen to these stories بنشاط, attentively, ورغبة, and enthusiastically. بنشاط ورغبة, with attention and with enthusiasm. So the ba means with. So when you combine it together, بنشاط, it gives you the adverbial translation. So prepositional phrases oftentimes they give you the benefit that adverbs in English would give you. Okay? وَبَدَأْتُ أَذْهَبُ, and I began going. وَبَدَأْتُ أَذْهَبُ, and I began going along with my father to the masjid. وَبَدَأْتُ أَذْهَبُ مَعَ أَبِي إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ وَأَقُومُ, and I would stand في صف الأطفال, in the row of children, in the children's row. خلف صف الرجال, behind the adults' row, the males. So the males would make their rows, and then the children's row would be behind the row of the rows of the males. ولما بلغت العاشرة من عمري, and when I turned 10 years old, and when I reached 10 years old, قال لي مرة, he said to me once, قد أكملت الآن, you have completed. قد أكملت الآن, now you have completed 9 years from your life. من عمرك 9 سنين. In other words, you're now 9 years old. You're now 9 years old. قد أكملت الآن من عمرك 9 سنين. والآن أنت ابن 10 سنين. And now you are a boy of 10 years. In other words, you're now 10 years old. You are a boy of 10 years. أنت ابن 10 سنين. فإذا تركت صلاة, so if you neglect the prayer, if you neglect a prayer, if you abandon a prayer, ضربتك, I will discipline you. So this إذا, it takes the verbs that follow it and it converts the verbs into the future tense. So although the verbs are madi, تركت zamadi and ضربت zamadi, تركت you and ضربت I. So if you abandon a prayer, ضربتك, I will discipline you. Okay, so he's telling him, if you abandon a prayer, ضربتك, I will discipline you. لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, because the Prophet, may Allah's mercy and blessings be upon him, قال, he said, مروا أولادكم, command your children. So this verb here, muru, it means command, and it's a command verb. So amara means instructed me. Amarani, instructed me. Amarani, amara ya'muru, and the command is mur. Mur, mura, muru. So it's like when you're speaking to a group of males. So the Prophet ﷺ is speaking to all of the fathers that muru awladakum, command, instruct your children to pray, wahum abna'u sab'i sinin, when they have reached 7 years of age, when they are children of 7 years old. Wahum abna'u sab'i sinin. Wadribuhum, and discipline them, alayha, for not praying. Wahum abna'u ashrin, when they are 10 years old. Wahum abna'u ashrin. Ashrin means 10. Okay. وقص علي أبي قصص الأطفال الذين حافظوا على الصلاة في الصغر. And my father told me, related upon me, in other words, told me stories of children that were punctual and diligent about their prayers within childhood. وكان لهم شأن في الكبر, and they went on to have a high level of honor in adulthood and status and respect. وَكَانَ لَهُمْ شَأْنٌ فِي الْكِبَرِ. So he's encouraging me to begin to be punctual with my prayers from an early age. قُلْتُ يَا أَبِي, I said, oh father, إنك لا تحتاج إلى أن تضربني. There's no need for you to discipline me. There's no need for you to discipline me. إنك لا تحتاج. You are not in need of disciplining me. Okay, so in other words, you have no need to discipline me. وسأحافظ, I'll do it myself. وسأحافظ على الصلوات. I will be diligent and I will maintain my prayers on my own. وكذلك فعلت, and this is exactly what I did. وكذلك فعلت. فقد كنت أصلي أينما كنت. So I would offer the prayers wherever I may be. فقد كنت أصلي أينما كنت. So I would offer my prayers wherever I would be. كنت إذا ذهبت إلى السوق, when I would go to the marketplace. أو كنت في شغل, or I was in some task, or I was preoccupied in some activity. شغل means activity. وأدركتني الصلاة, and the prayer came upon me في مكان, at a particular location, at a particular place. قام صليت, I would pray right there and then. لأني أرى الناس, because I see the people. لا يخجلون, they are not embarrassed from eating. They're not embarrassed when it comes to eating. إذا جاعوا, when they're hungry. إذا جاعوا. واللعب, and they're not shy from playing. إذا أرادوا, whenever the desire arises and whenever they want to. فلماذا, so why would I be embarrassed from praying? أخجل من الصلاة وإن الصلاة لفريضة, even though prayer is an obligation. وإن الصلاة لشرف للمسلم, and whereas prayer is an honor for the Muslim. Okay, so on this page we're seeing a bunch of verbs as well. So we have here لا تحتاج. So he's speaking to his father, so he's using second person verbs. تحتاج, تضرب, أحافظ, which is the 13, number 13, I will. And then other than that, there's a combining of a kana with the mudari going on here. فقد كنت أصلي. And then there's the إذا, converting the verbs into the future tense. إذا ذهبت إلى السوق. Okay, and the إذا, its meaning is connected to not just ذهبت إلى السوق, but also to كنت في شغل. And because of the أو, it relieves you from the need to repeat the إذا. Okay, شغل means activity. أدرك يدرك means to catch up. So when the prayer would come upon me, would catch me or come upon me, في مكان صليت. Okay, يخجلون is خجل يخجل, which means to be embarrassed or to be shy. من الأكل, from eating. إذا جاعوا, جاع يجوع, become hungry. لعب means to play. أراد يريد means to want or to desire. And okay, so let's retranslate this and then let's continue. قلت, I said, oh my father, إنك لا تحتاج إلى أن تضربني. Indeed, you will not have to discipline me. There's no need for you to discipline me. وسأحافظ, and I will surely. So what the scene does is it restricts the verb to the future tense, because the mudari verb has the possibility of both present as well as future. When you put a scene, then you're now restricting it. Not only that, but it adds a degree of emphasis as well, which sometimes will be reflected in the translation, and other times we just ignore it, and it will be subtle. So over here, if we say surely, I think it would be appropriate. وَحَافِظُ, and I will surely be punctual and maintain my prayers. على الصلوات. وَكَذَلِكَ فَعَلْتُ, and this is exactly what I did. فَقَدْ كُنْتُ أُصَلِّي, for indeed I would. So the qad is adding indeed, and كُنْتُ أُصَلِّي, the kana is combining with the mudari and giving us the past continuous. So indeed, I would offer my prayers wherever I may be. أينما كنت. وَكُنْتُ إِذَا ذَهَبْتُ, and when I would go to the marketplace, or I would be in a particular activity. وَأَدْرَكَتْنِي الصَّلَاةُ, and the prayer would come upon me. في مكان, at a location. صَلَّيْتُ, I would pray. لأني أرى الناس, because I see the people are not shy from eating whenever they're hungry. إذا جاعوا واللعب, and neither are they shy from playing whenever they have that desire or whenever they want. فلماذا, so why should I be shy from praying? وإن الصلاة Whereas, this waw here means whereas, or you could just say even though. Even though the prayer is an obligation, and even though the prayer is an honor for the Muslim. وَخَرَجْتُ مَرَّةً إِلَى مُبَارَاتٍ. And at one occasion, I went out to a sporting event. إِلَى مُبَارَاتٍ. بَارَى يُبَارِي, it means to compete. وَكَانَ الزِّحَامُ شَدِيدًا. And the crowd was extremely dense. وَكَانَ الزِّحَامُ شَدِيدًا. وَأَدْرَكَتْنِي صَلَاةُ الْعَصْرِ. And the Asr prayer came upon me. وَكُنْتُ عَلَى وُضُوء. And it just so happened that I was in a state of ablution. I had my wudu. فَقُمْتُ أُصَلِّي. So I stood praying. Right there. Like I found a private place and I stood and started praying. فَقُمْتُ أُصَلِّي. So I stood offering my prayer. وَجَعَلَ النَّاسُ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَيَّ. And the people began looking at me. وَيَتَعَجَّبُونَ. And they were astonished. وَجَعَلَ النَّاسُ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَيَّ. And the people began looking at me and they were astonished. So يَنْظُرُونَ نَظَرَ يَنْظُرُ. And this is تعجب يتعجب, it means to be astonished. وَأَكْمَلْتُ صَلَاتِي. And I completed my prayer with tranquility and calmness. وَرَجَعْتُ إِلَى الْمُبَارَاتِ. And I returned back to the sporting event. وَرَجَعْتُ إِلَى الْمُبَارَاتِ. وَلَمَّا انْتَهَتِ الْمُبَارَاتُ. And when the match came to an end. So this verb here is intaha, and it should have had an alif at the end. Intaha, that alif would drop because of the ta at the end. So intaha, intahaya, intahaw, intahat. So the verb base letters are nun, ha, and ya. The third base letter is a ya. And again, this is something that would be taught separately. وَلَمَّا انْتَهَتِ الْمُبَارَاتُ. And when the match came to an end, جَاءَ إِلَيَّ رَجُلٌ. A man approached me. وَسَأَلَنِي عَنِ اسْمِي. And asked me about my name. وَاسْمِ وَالِدِي. And asked me the name of my father. وَاسْمِ وَالِدِي. وَسَأَلَنِي عَنْ سِنِّي. And he asked me my age. فَأَخْبَرْتُهُ. So I told him. I informed him. فَأَثْنَى عَلَى أَبِي خَيْرًا. So he had good words to say about my father. فَأَثْنَى عَلَى أَبِي خَيْرًا. So he praised my father. وَدَعَى لِي بِالْبَرَكَةِ. And he prayed for me to be blessed. بالبركة. He gave a prayer, supplication of blessings for me. وقال. And he said, ما رأيت ولدا يصلي في المباراة. I've never seen a boy praying in a sporting event. ويترك كثير من الناس الصلاة في هذا الوقت. And many people abandon the prayer at such times, at such occasions. في هذا الوقت. فحمدت الله. So I said Alhamdulillah, I praised Allah. وشكرت أبي. And I was thankful to my father. ولا أترك الصلاة إذا كنت مسافرا. ولا أترك الصلاة إذا كنت مسافرا. And I do not abandon the prayer إذا كنت مسافرا, when I am traveling. وأرى كثيرا من الناس. And I see many people يصلون, offering the prayers في الحضر, when they're settled at home. ويتركون الصلاة في السفر. And abandon the prayer when they're traveling, during travel. So hadar and safar are like opposites of one another. So hadar would mean when you're settled at home, and safar would mean when you're traveling. وَيُصَلُّونَ فِي الصِّحَةِ. And they pray when healthy. وَلَا يُصَلُّونَ فِي الْمَرَضِ. And they do not pray when ill and sick. مَعَ أَنَّ الصَّلَاةَ لَا تَسْقُطُ. In spite of the fact that the prayer does not drop from anyone. Saqata yasqutu means to drop. In other words, the obligation to pray never goes away. Okay, even sick people need to pray. And even people that are traveling need to pray. وَأَرَى كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ لَا يُصَلُّونَ بِاعْتِدَالٍ وَسَكِينَةٍ. And I see many people do not offer their prayers بِاعْتِدَالٍ وَسَكِينَةٍ, with composure and calmly. وَيُسْرِعُونَ. And instead they rush. And they do it hurriedly. كثيرا. وَيُسْرِعُونَ كثيرا. ولا أذكر أني تركت صلاة في هذه السنوات الأربعة. And I do not remember that I ever abandoned the prayer in these 4 years. في هذه السنوات الأربع. وإذا نمت عنها. And when I fall asleep, forgetful of the prayer, when I fall asleep and as a result of that I'm unable to pray. So he says anha. So nimtu means when I fall asleep. when I fall asleep, heedless of the prayer. عنها, unable to pray. أو نسيتها, or I forget it. صليتها إذا تذكرت, I would offer it and make up for it إذا تذكرت, when I remember. وإني أسأل الله تعالى التوفيق والثبات, and indeed I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for steadfastness and to facilitate and to make it easy for me to continue in this path. التوفيق والثبات. So on this page, what are we seeing here in terms of the vocabulary? So ترك يترك means to abandon, to leave. ولا أترك الصلاة إذا كنت مسافرا, when I am traveling. وأرى كثيرا من الناس يصلون, and I see I see many people يصلون, offering the prayers. So the singular is يصلي and the plural is يصلون. The plural is يصلون. يتركون, and they abandon the prayer when traveling. ويصلون في الصحة. صحة means health, and the opposite of that is المرض. مع أن الصلاة لا تسقط, even though the prayer, the obligation of it never drops from anyone. لا تسقط عن أحد. And the rest of it I think is pretty clear. يسرعون is أسرع. يسرع means to rush, and كثيرا would add a degree of emphasis to that. So and they rush through the prayer hurriedly. ولا أذكر أني تركت صلاة في هذه السنوات الأربعة, within these 4 years. So هذه means these, because non-human plurals are treated singular feminine, and as-sanawat means years, and al-arba'i means 4. And when you're describing a plural noun with a number and attaching a number to it, then the gender of the number would mismatch the gender of the noun you're counting. So sana is feminine. Sana is feminine. So al-arba'a, and if it was like a'wam, which is a synonym for sana, في هذه الأعوام الأربعة, then you'd add a ta to the al-arba'a number. So like sab'u baqarat, 7 cows, because cow is feminine, so you say sab'u baqarat, or al-baqaratu sab'u, the 7 cows. 7. So you could do it sab'u baqarat, or you could do al-baqaratu sab'u. And if it's something where the singular is masculine, so it would be ar-rijalul arba'atu, arba'atu rijalin, arba'atu rijalin, or ar-rijalul arba'u. And maybe at some point we'll give you the grammar on how counting is done. So there's different rules for counting between 3 and 10, and then there's like the teens, like 11 and 12 have specific rules, and then 13, 14, 15 until 19 there's separate rules. And then when you combine with a multiple of 10, like 20, 30, 40, and you add a 1 or a 2 to that, or you add a 3 through 9 to that, then it changes. So there's some grammar behind how to count correctly, and if anyone would want that, I would be more than happy to create a separate video on the rules of counting. So go ahead, post in the comments and let me know if that's something you would appreciate or something you would find valuable. Okay, let's move on to the next passage and then we'll conclude this video. An-namlatu means the ant. So this word here, an-namla, is a singular word, and the plural is an-namlu. So you just remove the ta. When you get rid of the ta, it's an-namlu means ants, and an-namlatu means one ant. Okay, so that's technically not a plural. So in order for a singular to change to a plural, the pattern actually would break. It would be a broken plural. So this technically is called the ismu jins. Ismu jins jam'i. Ismu jins jam'i is a noun where the difference between the plural and the singular is by the addition of a ta and the removal of the ta. So when the ta is there, then it's like tamratun and tamrun. Tamratun is one date, and tamrun is dates. Or kalimatun. Kalimatun means one word, and if you want to say words, you say kalim, or you can say kalimat. And if you say kalimat, then that's a technical plural. That's a real plural. Okay, so an-namlatu, the ant. Okay, so this is a little complicated. It's a little difficult because it's poetry, but it's short. It's like barely a page. So let's focus on the vocabulary. He says طال السعي بالأمل. طال السعي بالأمل. My striving has gone on for a long time. Bil amal, in accordance to hope. Bil amal. In other words, I'm I don't just have wishful thoughts, and I don't just hope, but I actually put in the effort. طال السعي بالأمل. My effort is long in accordance to the hope. لست أرضى بالكسل. I am not satisfied and I am not content with laziness. لست أرضى بالكسل. غايتي, my objective, نيل الطلب, is to achieve my goal. طلب means goal. So my objective is to achieve my goal, whatever it takes. لا أبالي بالتعب. I do not care about fatigue and becoming tired. لا أبالي بالتعب. So over here we have طال, which is the verb at the front. طال يطول, it means to be prolonged or to go on for a long time. سعي is like jid and juhud, and there's several words, they all mean striving. سعي is a masdar. Amal means hope. لست أرضى, so this is رضي يرضى, and رضي يرضى means to be content, to be satisfied, and al-kasal is the noun for laziness. Okay, so لست أرضى بالكسل, I am not satisfied with laziness. غايتي, my objective, غاية, my objective is نيل الطلب, is to achieve the goal, in other words my goal. لا أبالي, I do not care, so this is بلا يبالي. I do not care, mudari verb, negated with the la. لا أبالي, I do not care about fatigue and tiredness. بالتعب, and ta'ab is the master for becoming tired, so it's like تعب يتعب, and that one there is كسل يكسل, I guess would be the verb for that. أبتني البيت الحسن, I build a beautiful home. أبتني, this is بنا يبني. بنا يبني means to build, and ابتنى يبتني is like a enhanced version of it. I build, in other words, I carefully build. So it would have a bit more meaning than just building. أبتني البيت الحسن, I carefully build a beautiful home. بنظام, systematically, strategically. للسكن, in order to live. Okay, ولقوتي, and for my sustenance, I set out. I go out in order to acquire my sustenance. لست يوما ألعب, I have not experienced a day of play. لست يوما ألعب, I have not been playing and wasting time for even a day. In other words, every day I go out, I do something productive, and I don't waste time. كل صيف, every summer, أجمع. Okay, this is all one sentence. The two halves of the couplet. كل صيف أجمع لي طعاما يشبع. Every summer I gather for myself food that satiates, food that fills me up and satiates and satisfies me. So طعاما يشبع is a phrase. طعاما would be موصوف, and يشبع would be a full sentence, combining and connecting and becoming the sifa. And we don't need a relative pronoun, الذي التي, because طعاما is indefinite. So the who, what, which is automatic. فإذا جاء المطر, so when the rainy season arrives, كان لي بيت المقر, my home becomes for me a place of rest, a place of rest. So كان لي بيت المقر. So this al-maqar here is the khabar of kana, and he added the al to it in order to maintain the rhythm and the rhyme of the poetry. Otherwise it should have been indefinite. Maqar should have been indefinite, and bayti would be the subject of the sentence, the ism of kana. Okay, so let me retranslate from the top, and then we'll move on to the next page. طال السعي بالأمل, my striving and my effort is prolonged in accordance to hope. So in other words, it's not just hope, but I actually do the things that I desire, and I put in the work and I put in the effort. لست أرضى بالكسل, I am not satisfied and content with laziness. غايتي نيل الطلب, my objective is to acquire my goal, whatever it takes. لا أبالي بالتعب, I do not care about fatigue and tiredness. أبتني البيت الحسن, I carefully build a beautiful home. بنظام, systematically. للسكن, in order to live. ولقوتي, so in order to live. So this is giving the reason for the building. The reason I'm doing the building is in order to live. Now we have something in the language called maf'ul lahu. And maf'ul lahu is like I hit him for the purpose of discipline. I hit him for the purpose of discipline. And discipline is not something you do with your limbs. The hitting you do with your limbs, but the discipline is the goal and the objective. And sakan is something you actually do. So you live, it's a physical thing. So physical things are not normally reflected through the adverb of reason and cause, but you use the li, and that's why lissakan. And the other thing is because it's poetry and he wants to keep the meter and the rhythm, so he has the li there, and I think that's standard. Okay, moving on to the next line. Waliquti, qut means sustenance, food, qut, and the plural is aqwat. Waliquti adhabu, and for my food I set out. Lastu yawman al'abu, I do not play. And laysa, it negates the predicate within the present. So the predicate here is the playing, so he's negating the playing right now. But then he adds the word yawman. So there's not a single day where I just waste time and I play. Kulla sayfin ajma'u, every summer. So this is the answer to the question when. We call that maf'ul fi. And ajma'u is the main verb of the sentence. Kulla sayfin ajma'u, every summer I gather li ta'aman, for myself, food that satiates. Ta'aman yushbi'u. فإذا جاء المطر, so when the rainy season arrives, كان لي بيت المقر, my home becomes for me a place of rest. Okay, موضع الاستقرار. ذاك شأني, this is my affair. في الصغر, in my youth, in youth. ونظامي, and this is my discipline. في الكبر, within old age. Okay, ذاك شأني في الصغر ونظامي في الكبر. So صغر means youth and kibar means old age, and both of these are verbal nouns. So the verb would be صغر يصغر, to be young, and كبر يكبر would mean to be old. إنني نعم المثل, indeed what a wonderful example is my diligence in work. What a wonderful example is my diligence in work. So إنني نعم المثل باجتهادي في العمل. So over here the ba, I would say this ba is extraneous, and it's not to be translated. We don't translate this ba. He added it there in order to keep the meter and the rhythm, and because ni'ma is a particular kind of verb. It's from a group of verbs called the af'alul madhi wa dham, the verbs of praise and dispraise. And ni'ma would have a fa'il, which is the word mathal, and it would have something that's singled out for praise. What is it that you're praising? You say, what a wonderful man Zayd is. Ni'ma ar-rajulu Zaydun. So ar-rajulu would be the fa'il of ni'ma, and Zayd would be the what we call makhsus bil madh, the thing that's being singled out for praise. So my diligence in work is the thing that's being praised. So if you want to encourage someone to be diligent and to be hardworking, then you can point at me and you can use me as an example, and maybe that will encourage them to do the same. And that concludes this passage. And with that, we will end the video, and inshallah we'll see you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.